Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in today. Today, talking about racism or some stories I wanted to share with you in my past that I've had on both sides of the spectrum, and some stories that I have heard that were interesting in the time. I've had the opportunity to be confronted by not just white supremacists, but like skinheads with pit bulls and had pit bulls, and they had the whole camouflage thing. They were part of a gang that spent a lot of time in British Columbia, and then also did things in Montreal. So they were kind of national, and they probably had connections. This was in the 90s when I was a security guard, or a guard for a bingo hall back when I was a kid. And my first day on the shift working there, I'm trying to give a good impression to everybody, and these two guys show up with camouflage pants, these really scowly looking faces with skinheads, and they're looking at the Mexican restaurant right beside the hall that I was protecting, and watching all the cars. And they look inside and they see this girl. I guess they were checking her out for the cat call, and then they look a little closer and are like, oh, it's just some packy bitch. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And so I looked at them and I said, hi guys. And they looked at me, and then they kept on walking. And I don't think they liked the fact that I said something to them. I was pretty naive at the time, so I didn't really know what they were all about until a little bit later. And then going on a little bit in the shift, so let's say about 4 hours later, the bingo hall was closing, and I was opening the door and saying goodnight to all the patrons, and a red car pulls up with two younger people, and they're just staring at me the entire time as I'm opening the door. And finally they make sure that I had full eye contact, and they looked at me very quietly, and they went, and then they made sure that they stayed there for a long time, so that they knew that they weren't going anywhere, and that their deliberate intention was to intimidate me. And so that was day one on my shift, working security in an area in British Columbia. I won't say where it is, but I think a lot of people know where it is to this day. And a little while later, I go driving up the road just to kind of see what's going on, and there it is. There's this one-floor house on the corner about 100 yards away from where I was doing security work, and it has as drapes. Its drapes were not regular drapes. Its drapes was actually a swastika, and I'm like, oh great. And then it turns out that these guys were all friends with all the rest of the interesting people of that time. Everyone was trying to come into our parking lot a lot of times, steal cars off of us, start all sorts of things. And the entire neighborhood was trying to get rid of these guys, but they couldn't. And these guys would be like, why are you guys always picking on us, right? But in the meantime, I think they were picking on them because they were deliberately trying to intimidate everybody, and anybody that wasn't their color, they were trying to kind of like make them feel like they weren't welcome. They had also very interesting names. They weren't regular names like Joe and Lawrence. They were more like names that you would get from villain types of WWE patrons, sort of thing. And that went on for a while. That was an interesting area. It was kind of a low-income area, and it also was an area where I had to fill out a few police reports, so I got to know the police pretty well. And boy, there were some crazy things that happened over there. I had one guy that, I can't prove it, but you know what you know. He was literally, like, this is the mentality of people over there. This guy was literally slashing tires on my shift, and then saying, hey, there's this tire that's slashed on your, slashed. And then would actually walk some of the patrons home or help them out. Crazy people. And so that was an interesting experience. And I'll flip the side and talk about black supremacy, or just not being in a color, being in an area where you shouldn't be. So the United States is pretty interesting, and a friend and I flew to Miami, Florida from Vancouver, picked up a BMW where we were going to buy the car and drive it all the way back up to Vancouver and then sell it, like a lot of people do and did back then. And so we drove a route where a friend of mine, Leo, had actually walked across America in 100 days. We took that same route, and he used to do these videos everywhere he did when he walked across America. Where he'd be like, well, hey everybody, I'm here in Biloxi, Mississippi, and this is a great casino over here, or there's a great beach over here, or he'd be in certain areas as he's walking across. Every single day he filmed his trip, and every once in a while you say, like, the police are here just to make sure that we're okay. And so I'm like, well, it sounds like America is pretty safe. We can do that. And so as we're driving our BMW, we took the East Coast. We stopped off at Daytona, which was fantastic. So you see me with a Daytona hat. That's where I got it from. I actually got it from the Speed Raceway with the, we got to actually go on the track and everything. Daytona is incredible. And as we drove, through Florida, we drove through Mississippi, Alabama, and then we got to to Louisiana, and I've always was interested in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, let's just go sleep over there because we can go check out the French plantations. We can have some great food. That's what I'm thinking is going on in my head because I'm an idiot, and I'm not the guy that I was driving with, the guy who bought the car. He wasn't just a white guy. He was like the whitest Canadian on the planet at the time. And whenever we were down in the States during that time, like every third sentence that came out of him was like "a," and we ended up in an all-black area of Baton Rouge in the middle of the night in a convertible BMW, and the gas stations were all locked. You had to actually wait outside, and he was getting cold, and he was started asking, like, why aren't you letting us in? And the black guy who was the gas register guy, he was like, what are you doing over here? You shouldn't be here at all. Don't you know there's been 71 murders this year? And basically we got the idea that if we don't get out there, we're going to get killed. And it was a freaking experience. And so we hightailed it out of there, made it to Texas. And as we got into Texas, we ended up at a gas station because we had to finally fill up gas because we were not sticking around in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. As we got there, as I was shaking because I was driving the car at the time, this guy is delivering the local produce for the gas station, where people bring their trucks to the gas station for materials that they're going to sell. And this guy's looking at me and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I was in an all black area and they all freaked me out. And I'm talking to a black guy, right? So it's, I'm actually talking to a black guy, and he's like listening to me talk about what happened. And he's like, dude, I'd never go in those areas. That's and then eventually years later I ran into another guy, and he was saying he went to all 50 states, and the only place he was ever scared to go was certain areas of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm like, okay. So, and then I told a couple of my friends, like I have a black person in my family, and I also have, and his wife is my sister, and he's like, you were in X area and Y area and you survived? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, don't you know you're not supposed to go in there? And then eventually I'm like, okay, so basically I was naive with the white supremacists, and I was naive with the black things. I have a friend who's a pastor who was in Montgomery, Alabama, where he's sitting there in a restaurant, and he and his wife, his Asian wife, and he's a white guy. And literally half an hour goes by, or an hour goes by, and he realizes he's not getting served because they will not serve whites over there, or people that weren't black. And so finally he had to leave. So there's a lot of that stuff that goes on in those areas. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see where things are at. Things haven't changed. Eventually my friend that walked across America, we ended up having dinner one day about a year later after this happened, and I kind of sat down with him, and we're like, so, and then we had a real heart-to-heart about what it was really like walking across America or taking the South, because they were always taking back roads. And what happened was, he was saying like the The South is really messed up. Like, you got to be real careful where you go. And so when he was sitting there like, hi everybody, the police are just making sure we're okay, he basically meant to say the police are making sure that we're okay. Like, more like, you know, making sure nothing happens, because of course you don't want some guy that's, you know, being where reporters are going to visit him every once in a while, and he's stopping off at local churches, making sure that he's okay. You don't want to be in the city where someone gets killed like that. So it was interesting experiences in those types of areas. So I've kind of seen both sides of the scope. I've never really felt like I had any issues with racism. I really don't care. Like, I don't really care about the fact that I'm Indo-Canadian or any of that stupid crap. I just you know, I don't care. If you're good at something, if you're a cool guy or a cool person, I'm good. If you're not, that's another story. And also, I don't think I'd ever flaunt, because we live in this world of social justice warriors, I would never flaunt the fact that I have, like, you know, this type of friend or that type of friend or any of that sort of stuff. You know, I'm not using them for social justice warrior fodder or evidence or anything. So, and I would suggest you guys don't. So I wanted to share a couple of stories, because I hadn't done one of these things in a while, and everyone's losing their bloody minds online. Good grief. Anyway, my name is Leslie Michael Jr. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe. No, I haven't done one of these journals for a while, but anyway, hope things are good, and we will talk soon. Bye.